What is mental fitness? Hey everyone, welcome to the Cope and Chill podcast, your place for practical approaches to better emotional health and well-being, and I'm your host, Ron Martin. Check us out on YouTube at Cope and Chill, and if you're interested in meditations to help you with anxiety and overthinking, or maybe even better sleep, give one of our meditations a try at Cope and Chill on YouTube. We are also on Instagram and on Facebook. Just search for Cope and Chill. Okay, so today we'll be talking with mental fitness coach Frida Soerensen. Mental fitness is about having a sense of well-being and resilience, and is something that can be strengthened by doing something called PQ reps. PQ reps are practices that you can do to strengthen your positive intelligence, or the ability to remain calm, cool, and collected in the face of what life throws at you. It's about resilience, and PQ reps are part of the framework described as positive intelligence. And this can be found in a book written by Shirzad, who is chairman of CTI, the largest coach training organization in the world. And Shermeen holds a PhD in neuroscience, a BA in psychology, an MS in electrical engineering, and an MBA from Stanford. So he's a very well-educated and experienced man. Frida Soerensen, who will be joining us today, is a mental fitness coach who can help you learn and apply all of the wonders of positive intelligence to your life. You can find her at Wellness with Frida on Instagram, and she has a link to a free assessment, which you will find in the show notes, where you can go and take a test to see how mentally fit you are. What I find most interesting about positive intelligence, as Shirzad Shermeen has defined it, and as Frida talks about it, is that it seems to combine a few different things that we have talked about on my show. For instance, the framework that talks about internal saboteurs that holds us back, the parts of us that show up as critics, doubters, and avoiders, that's contained within the positive intelligence framework. And this is similar to internal family systems that we've talked about on the show. But then with the saboteurs identified in positive intelligence, Frida suggests that when we become aware that we are sabotaging ourselves, we can quickly get grounded through a series of short mindfulness practices and then reframe how we are thinking about things. Quite a useful approach, I think, and I hope you think so as well. I really enjoyed talking with Frida. She's quite a pleasant person, and I hope you enjoy listening to her as well. So thank you once again for joining us this week on the Cope and Chill podcast. And now, here's Frida Soerensen. Hey everyone, welcome to the Cope and Chill podcast. I'm here with Frida Soerensen, and Frida is a mental fitness coach. And so Frida, thank you for joining me today. I would love to hear from you exactly what a mental fitness coach is and how you help people.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show, Ron. It's been wonderful chatting with you. So that's right. I'm a mental fitness coach, specifically for women. I also work with men, but I specialize in women. And at the moment, I'm specializing especially in helping expat women and multicultural women to find true belonging within themselves. And mental fitness is basically the way that we identify mental fitness is actually your ability to meet life's challenges and great opportunities with a positive mindset instead of a negative one. And as a mental fitness coach, I help you to identify the limiting beliefs, the critical thoughts, the negative thoughts and emotions that actually bring you down, that keep you stuck, that keep you avoiding and procrastinating or trying to control life when there's really no way to control that. and actually help to create a switch in the brain where you're operating from the part of your brain that's capable of positive emotions, such as curiosity, empathy, innovation. So if there's a problem, you know how to explore and innovate, as opposed to go into fear and anxiety and stress, which is what, really just keeps us stuck. So
Okay,
it's
so
really helping you create that shift.
yeah. So if we liken it to physical fitness, right? The things that make us stronger, that make us more resilient, that make us we feel better if we're more physically fit. Do you have this? So are you saying it's the similar kinds of benefits mentally that we would experience? You're more resilient mentally, emotionally. You maybe feel better, or you're able to
Yeah.
help yourself feel better.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like to tell the story about, if you're a bike rider and you're just riding on a flat, even path and you're of average physical health, you're going to be able to ride along that road pretty smoothly, and you might not really get that tired, even if you ride a few kilometers.
Mhm.
Um, but suddenly, if you put that same person in front of a mountain and you're suddenly going off road and you've got like hills and maybe you have to get off and climb and bring your bike with you and things like that, you're probably going to end up having an accident. You're going to fall off. You're going to maybe even get a third up the mountain and completely give up. And if so that's the same with mental fitness. We actually want to create a level of mental fitness where you are confident that no matter what life puts in front of you, you're going to be able to turn that into a gift and an opportunity, to grow. But you also know that you have the resources to cope with it. But it's not only the challenges. You might get an incredible opportunity to move overseas or to a job promotion or something like that, and you also want to be able to tackle that opportunity, right? Instead of going, oh no, I can't do that, and then miss out. So both ways, right?
Yeah, as you were giving that great example of bike riding, what came to mind for me was that, yeah, so you're improving your mental fitness so that you can handle those peaks and valleys, just like you
Yeah.
would when you're biking, that come throughout life, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're more mentally fit to be able to work through those things. So
Mm.
tell us a bit more about mental fitness. Now, I understand that underneath that is something called positive intelligence. What is positive intelligence, and how does that play
Mm.
out?
So positive intelligence, it's actually a really beautiful, well, positive intelligence to start with is the name of a book authored by uh, Stanford lecturer Shirzad. And he wrote a beautiful book around a lot of research that's synthesized around positive intelligence, positive psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, performance science. Um, and what they found with all that research was that there are only three mental fitness muscles that you need to develop. And we only have 10 ways that we sabotage ourselves. So they talk a lot about self-sabotage. And you might recognize, the critical voice, the judge that inside your head that's criticizing everything that happens in your life.
So when we talk
So
about saboteurs, what we're saying is that these are the things that show up mentally for us that might cause us to doubt ourselves, that might put fear in the way of trying to accomplish something, that might, well, I think you might have said self-limiting beliefs, right?
yes,
These are things
yes,
that
that
limit
limit
us.
you. Hmm.
And so you say
Yeah,
there's how many of these?
there
There's
are 10 of those.
10 of those.
And depending on sort of what type you are, you will have you lean more towards 2 or 3 of those saboteurs in terms of how you sabotage.
Okay. And so
So, yeah.
do you remember what some of those are? I think you mentioned a couple before. So if I'm trying to identify my own saboteurs, what are the labels that would help me to know which ones they are?
Yes, so I can certainly talk a little bit about the different ones. So the master of all saboteurs, your Darth Vader of saboteurs, is your judge. So
So this
everybody's
is
got
us
a judge.
judging ourselves and saying,
Exactly.
being
It's
harsh on
judging
ourselves.
you. It judges in 3 ways. It judges you. It judges other people. It judges and criticizes other people, and then it judges your circumstance. So, and this is a big one because the judging of the circumstance, it's the voice inside your head that's saying, "I will be happy when." And we all have these things. I remember when I was a young adult, it was like, I'm happy when I graduate from university. Then I'll be happy when I get my license. Then I'll be happy when I get a great job. Then I'll be happy when I get my first apartment, my blah and blah. And it keeps going. And we never actually get there because there's this mental thing inside our head that's saying, you're never going to be really happy until you get this, and then the bar shifts every time.
And then
So yeah,
you said I think you said there's a people pleaser one, right?
yes. So then everybody's got a judge. Then you have 9 accomplished saboteurs, and these are the saboteurs that the judge brings in to help. So for example, there's a pleaser saboteur, which is basically it's afraid of rejection, right? So it's always trying to please other people to the great detriment of the self. Because, and I'm a pleaser, it's one of my biggest saboteurs. Typically, people with a pleaser type saboteur might burn out because they're just giving. People that you're in relationships with, they might not really feel that they know you because they have this feeling that you're never really telling the truth about how you're feeling.
Yeah, that's true.
So it actually, even though the pleaser wants to have great relationships, it's actually sabotaging itself by not being always truthful.
The people pleasing, there's another term that I've heard used along with that recently called self-abandonment, which is basically that you're not really going to validate or stick up for your own needs and desires because it's all about the other people and not wanting to disappoint them. But as you point out, it's a form of being disingenuous, right? Because you're not really being honest about your own feelings and about your own needs and wants. And so,
very
it
true.
even is to a degree manipulative, right? Because you're really working very hard to try to get those other people to like you and to validate you and to accept you. And that's kind of, so it has an aim to it, right? So
exactly, and the very typical thing about saboteurs is that it actually the result it gives you is the opposite to what you want it to create, right? So the pleaser want you to have great relationships with people, but in the end it gives you the opposite, because if you burn out and you abandon people, or you're not being truthful about your feelings to your husband or to your the people, your colleagues, for example, it has dire consequences at the end, potentially destructive.
All right, so we have the judge, we have the avoider,
we also have the avoider. So the avoider is my top saboteur, and this is the avoider is loves just to be pleasant all the time, wants to have a good time, wants to feel relaxed and things like that. But then the detriment is that we end up avoiding things that are, doing the hard things, having difficult conversations with people, doing that task, putting it off, procrastinating. And then you get this whole cycle of anxiety, of stress, because there's all these things that has been avoided,
Yeah.
right? So at the end, again, it creates the opposite to what you wanted, which was like to live life in balance, to feel relaxed and grounded.
Yeah, and so maybe rather than going into detail with the rest, is it possible to list them, or is there a list that people could maybe go to your website after the show to get to see what these are?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
so I'll
but I
share
think,
with you the link
yeah,
where people can actually take a free saboteur assessment, so you can actually go and find out what
that's
your what
awesome.
your top threes are. I really would recommend that.
That's awesome. So, and I think the point to bring up to people is, as I understand it, because it sounds, as I mentioned to you previously, very similar to this psychological approach, this therapeutic approach called internal family systems, where these things exist inside of us because they're actually coping mechanisms, right? These are things that are there to protect us, to help us, and maybe they were useful at one point in our lives, maybe when we were young, but then we've held on to those approaches, and that as we've gotten older, there are probably more effective ways that we could go about working through life, but we still have these things, and they're still a part of us. And so we still have those people-pleasing tendencies. We still may avoid things because we're afraid of failure or what have you. So they have a purpose. So I don't want anybody to sort of feel like these are things that, like, well, why do I have these things? Or, most of us do, right? And they're there, and it really is about working with them and managing them. And it's not about shaming yourself or shutting these things out. It's about acknowledging them and working with them.
Yeah, can I
Yeah,
add a little bit
please.
to that, Ron? So the little difference there is that we say that the saboteurs that we have are actually our greatest strengths taken overboard.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was like if we were born with a tendency to be really caring and helpful and pleasing, then as children, or as we grew up, we had this really great hammer that we knew how to use really well.
Yeah.
And then that's just the tool that we used for every single situation, right? So we ended up doing it too much, and now it's kind of sabotaging us as opposed to serving us. So what mental fitness coaching does is actually taking your saboteurs and finding this kind of acceptance for them, but also then toning it down to how do we come back to using this as your greatest strength. So if you're a people pleaser, how do we let the wiser part of you use this, where you are setting boundaries for yourself, where you're being honest about your relationships, and that way you thrive.
Yes.
And
So you're
yeah.
kind of regulating their use and not letting them go overboard and take
Yes.
control.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So you talked before we got into this, the list of the saboteurs. You talked about three core mental fitness muscles. What
Yes.
are those three core mental fitness muscles?
Yes. So the very first one is, now we've talked about these saboteurs. So it's actually your saboteur interceptor muscle. And this is where you learn to identify, when am I being hijacked by one of my saboteurs, or when am I hijacked basically by saboteurs, right? And very simple way that you can identify that is that if I'm feeling any kind of negative emotion, so if you're feeling fear, frustration, anger, irritation, very likely you're hijacked. And it doesn't mean that your negative emotions are bad. It's the same as asking you, is pain bad? If you have the hand on the hot stove,
Yeah.
it's pretty important that you feel the pain, right? So you
Yes.
can remove the hand and not damage yourself further. So this is the same thing, that if you're feeling any kind of negative emotions, it means that something is up. You need to act on something.
Yeah,
But
emotions communicate.
yes,
Yes, they're a form of communication to us. Yeah.
yes, exactly. But what we say is that you don't need to be in that negative emotions for 3 hours. you really only need to be in that negative emotion for the second it takes you to go, oh, something's wrong. I'm angry. My colleague crossed my boundary. I need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the second mental fitness muscle is your self-command muscle. And this is actually the building blocks of mindfulness. It's really just being able to remove, to bring your focus to come back to your senses. Because when you're in negative emotion, you're hijacked by the fight, flight, and flee response. You're hijacked by negative thoughts. And you can't really act well with
Yeah.
calm, clear focus if
Yeah.
you are in that mode.
Yeah.
So first, we need to shift you to a part of your brain where you're like, you're focusing on your breath. You're focusing on the feeling of your feet on the floor, the feeling of your fingertips touching. And this actually creates the shift in your brain where you can come into what we call sage mode. And sage means inner wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And that's the part of your brain where you can step into curiosity, or you can step into empathy, or action, like inspired action,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to lashing out at your colleague right then and there, right? So
So it's a bit of a grounding practice and or series of practices and a form of self-regulation, right?
yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the third mental fitness muscle is actually your sage muscle. So being able to step into this higher being, which is your sage, um, which is coming from a place of, I talked about these things like being able to innovate, to explore, to feel empathy for people that have done you wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
this can't happen unless you've been practicing the second step. You have to be able to come back into the body and shift away from that kind of saboteur,
And is this
mode.
what you called when we spoke before PQ reps? So positive intelligent
Yes,
positive
quotient.
intelligence quotient reps. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm also a mindfulness teacher and a yoga teacher, and people who have practiced these modes will recognize that PQ reps, they're really just mindfulness and meditation skills broken down into
Mm-hmm.
like 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. So it
So
might be a grounding practice. So for instance, I know one that I also used to teach mindfulness as
yeah,
well. And there are a number of grounding practices, but one could be looking around the room and noticing the different colors of the things that surround you. So there's a yellow book and there's a black TV and right. And so the point is that your mind is focusing on being present with what's around you and your surroundings. You could even do that with smells or what are you smelling or things that you might hear and noticing how many different sounds you could hear. So it's just bringing you back into the present and grounding you, right?
yes, exactly. So really, really simply, you want to notice if you're feeling any kind of negative emotion. Then you want to, that's your interceptor, your saboteur interceptor muscle. Then you want to go, okay, I choose to bring my focus now to the feeling of my feet on the floor for 3 breaths,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I'm going to take 10 deep breaths now, go into the toilet, excuse yourself from your angry colleague or whichever
Mm-hmm.
situation you're in, go to the bathroom, take 10 deep breaths, ground yourself, shift, create that shift. And then from there you can act out of sage.
And I think for me, when I've been emotional and I've tried to do those grounding practices, sometimes the emotion is very intense for me. So what I do, and maybe you have a different suggestion, but what I do in addition to that is before I even can get to that grounding practice, I have to actually acknowledge, I have to validate and acknowledge the emotion. So I have to say to myself something like, okay, I'm angry right now. And maybe even say there's a part of me that's angry right now, right? So I'm feeling like this is familiar to or similar to a wound that I might have had when I was a kid or something like that, and it really hurts, and I'm upset right now, and I have a right to be right. And then after I'm able to do that, then I can sort of bring myself to perform that grounding practice
Yeah.
that you mentioned. And then the
Yeah,
shift
I really
happens.
love that. Yeah, I mean, the empathy is one of the, so there are 5 sage powers that you also learn through mental fitness. The first one you learn is empathy.
Mm,
And the first one you learn is empathy towards yourself.
yeah.
So a really beautiful way, like what you're saying, Ron, is that you can actually, put your hand on your heart
Mm-hmm.
when you're in that really kind of, I just can't even deal.
Yeah.
And you can just feel, you can send the empathy, you can say some words while you're breathing, you can feel. So a PQ rep is also putting your hand on your heart and feeling the chest and the warmth and breathing in and saying a few words.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, because
Breath
this
work,
is,
yeah, it's also a great grounding practice too. Yes. Go ahead.
yeah. So I really love that you bring that up, because this is the difference between our saboteurs and our sage, is that our saboteurs are, so they will tear you down,
Yes.
until you are in pieces and you are incapable of doing anything. I have a client that is in his mid 50s that didn't show up for interviews, for jobs, because his judge was just tearing him down so much about that he couldn't do it, that he wasn't good enough.
Mm,
So,
mm,
and this is what happens to us, right? And that's self-sabotage in action.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So the
Yes.
first thing is really to find this kind of empathy for ourselves, because it didn't work. The judging and the pushing
Yes,
and
that's
the,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
And it didn't lead, yeah, it didn't lead to an outcome that we actually truly wanted, right? It actually held us
Yeah.
back, right? As you said, it's
Yes,
a saboteur,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you can create, there are people who have $1 million businesses who have done it through their saboteurs. They push themselves and, gotten there. But the
Hmm.
difference is that it doesn't bring happiness.
Mm,
That's the pure difference, because
mm,
saboteurs will never bring you happiness.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
again, it's not about getting rid of them. It's about working with them
Yeah.
so that you can, as you said, this is about self-mastery, right? And it's
Mm,
about you managing or controlling them as opposed to them managing and controlling you, right? It's putting some
exactly.
order to the house, I guess, if you
Exactly.
will.
Exactly. And you can say, "Hey, I hear you, Judge. I can tell you that you're not wanting me to do this and that, and my avoiders playing in here, but I'm gonna choose to tune it down and come from Sage, or I'm gonna choose to do my PQ reps. Yeah.
So, okay, so we talked about the saboteurs, we talked about the core mental fitness muscles, and then we talked about PQ reps. What else would we need to know about the approach in terms of how you work with people?
Mm.
How long does it take for someone to realize any results from working with you, or would you see it right away because it's that understandable or simple?
Mm. Well, we have, if you work with me, then you will receive the 7 week positive intelligence program that's created by Shirzad. And I take you through, I coach you through the things that you are learning through that course. I have had clients say on the first week going, wow, I did not realize that my judge had so much influence
Mm,
on my relationships, on how I feel on a daily basis. Um, and I've had others say that I didn't know that I had control over my brain,
mm,
that I actually had, yeah,
yeah,
any kind of, yeah, of say that I can actually change my own mind.
yeah,
So, but it's a muscle, so
yeah,
it's like you don't just buy a gym pass and go once a month and think that you've developed the muscle, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so the program actually requires you to do 15 minutes daily of PQ, this mental
Oh, that's
fitness
awesome. Yeah.
exercises. And the program is 6 weeks, because this is how long it takes for the muscle to actually start developing. So they've actually taken pictures of the brain after the 6 week program, and you can see that the parts of this brain has developed in this time.
So how does this work? So you take a 7-week course online, and then they check in with you throughout that period of time. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so it's got a beautiful app where you have your PQ gym
Mm-hmm.
that we recommend you go to daily to accrue your 15 minutes. It shows you exactly how much muscle you're developing. It shows you how much sage muscle that you have stored up in the moment, because it will, if you do 12 minutes, for example, in the morning, if you haven't done any more at 3 p.m., then of course it drains. You're going to get tired and you lose connection to your body and you get distracted. So the idea is that you're always charging. Then every Saturday, you have a new video from Shirzad that you have access to, and you watch that video. And then you meet with me for a 1 hour coaching session, and we talk about your judge and how did your judge play with you this week, and what has been difficult, and what are you learning. So you're really unpacking what's happening to you as you're discovering these things about yourself.
And then what kinds of situations do you have typical? You work with women. Oh, I think we just lost her. Okay, we had a little bit of a glitch there, but we're back. And so what I wanted to ask you was, so why do people come work with you? What is it they're looking to address when they come work with you? Are there some common themes? And you work with women primarily, so
Yes.
I'd love to know how you help them and what situation.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I do get a lot of people to come for stress management. I actually started off as a stress management coach, so I really specialize in this area. And really just learning to find more balance between their commitments. But a lot of the times I also get
When you say
people.
balance between their commitments, meaning
Yeah.
be able to overcome their internal saboteurs, or what do you mean by that when you say more balance?
Yeah, I mean, look, primarily people come for, for managing like what's going on with them mentally and emotionally. And this might be in the arena of managing their life and their work,
Mhm.
or it might be a relationship that's causing them stress, and how can they, and it's about, how do the saboteurs actually play in when you are at work with your colleagues, or when you are you know trying to meet your own needs, but also being a pleaser and try to meet the needs of everybody else, right? So you actually learn about how your saboteurs keep you in those patterns of behavior, whether it's at work or whether it's within relationships, or yeah, but what arena it is.
Mhm.
But recently, I've also worked a lot with international women, and this is around actually belonging
Mm.
and
Mm.
finding home,
Mhm.
um, actually wherever you are.
Mm.
And that home is in here, because when you're moving a lot, there's obviously this potentially something you're not finding belonging in certain things, or this place isn't meeting a certain criteria. But really, if we're not happy with what's going on inside, if we're not capable of finding empathy for ourselves, or, being happy with finding gratitude in the moment that we have, then we're going to constantly be pushing that bar. I'll be happy when I get a new job, or when I move to London, or when I find a community of belonging, or which is also important, of course, but the work really starts here, if you,
Yeah.
yeah. If
And
you've
that's a
heard
great,
about that, the self-care analogy where you put on the oxygen mask yourself
yes, yeah.
before someone else, it's
Yeah.
the same thing, it's like going inside and actually meeting our internal needs and really understanding what's going on there.
It's a great point, because I think the way I look at it, and one of the reasons that I became really interested in doing a podcast like this, is because I realized that, um, you know, you can and actually one of the reasons why I started practicing mindfulness in the first place anyway is because you can always chase something else that you think is going to make you happy. It's elusive. And like you say, it's like once you attain that one thing, you're still not satisfied. You still have to go after something else. So and where does it ever end? And to your point, is where it ends is with the relationship to yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's that connection to yourself, as you say, the compassion, the empathy, the validation, because even if you don't get it anywhere else, you can always give it to yourself. So as you say, it's like the home is inside of you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Point on. Yeah, spot on.
So how could people work with you if they wanted to work with you?
Yeah, well,
Where would they
actually,
find you? Yeah.
you can find me at at Wellness with Frida on Instagram. Um, DM there. You can also send me an email at fridasoerensen.com, and I'll share those info with you, Ron. A really nice offer that I do is that also you can go and do your saboteur assessment,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can book a free saboteur consultation with me, and we go through your results and what that means for you and how you move on from there. That would also be a great way of connecting with me, and then you get real value from getting some insight into your own self-sabotage. I can
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
you it's
yeah.
very interesting. Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
has been awesome. Awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like the audience to know before we go?
Um, well, I think that's it. I mean, yeah, I think the message that I really want to get at here is that everybody, mental fitness is for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
This is vital. This is even more vital than your gym membership,
Mm-hmm.
because we get a gym membership and then we don't use it. But
Mm.
if you get a mental fitness membership, you will have the mindset to do the things that you set your mind to doing. So then your gym membership will suddenly be worth it, because you're actually going to the gym.
Yeah.
You're actually doing the things that you said that you would do. Provided you do the practice and develop these mental fitness muscles. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yes, absolutely. You clear the mental hurdles to get to the gym, which is often the case.
Yes.
Yeah. So so thank you so much, Frida, for being with me today. And
You're
this has been
welcome.
great. And you have a wealth of information to share with people. And I love what you're doing. And I'll be sure to include all the ways to connect with you in our show notes. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Ron, for having me. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you were able to take some inspiration or something of value from today's show. To access all of the resources and links mentioned, please head on over to copeandchill.com or our video-based podcast on our YouTube channel at Cope and Chill, where you will find the show notes for today's episode. That's Cope and Chill, CopeandChill.com. And for information about upcoming episodes, check us out on Instagram at Cope and Chill. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're joining us from YouTube, and leave a comment wherever you're joining us from. Please come back and join us again for next week's episode. But until then, take care of yourselves.